Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I see so many folks joining us for today's Conversation of Hope. Give us just a moment here until our guests can all arrive, and then we will get started. It is really good to scroll through the attendee list and see so many wonderful friends and family and people who've been connected to Community of Hope for such a long time, and people who we know do excellent work in this community. We're so encouraged to have you all joining us today. I'm going to start our program. My name is Leah Garrett, and I'm our Vice President for Development and Communications here at Community of Hope. And today you are joining Conversations of Hope. These conversations are a chance for us to give our donors and our friends some deep insights into our work and into some of our most exciting initiatives. Today's session is going to focus on an overview of our housing system, a glance at our new Honey program that just launched this week, and then what we are doing to end homelessness for individuals in Washington, D.C. Again, so excited to have so many friends here today. We have funding partners, donors, volunteers, community members, partner organizations. We have about 70 RSVPs, and so I'm sure folks will be coming and joining throughout the course of this event. We are in a Zoom webinar format. That means that I and our other panelists and guests, we can't see your videos, so I hope you're okay with that. And you'll remain as guests muted throughout. But we are recording this webinar, and we'll have a chance to share the link afterwards so that you can share it with others, or you can come back and rewatch it. Just so you know, our run of show today includes introductions, Kelly giving an organizational overview. We're going to give an overview of our housing programs, and then we have interviews with some of our just remarkable team members who are leading our housing and some of our community impact work. So it's going to be really interesting all throughout. We do have the Q&A enabled, and we encourage you to put in questions. I think that you should be able to put in questions in the chat as well. We'll be looking for those throughout. We are going to have a Q&A session at the end. We may stop and answer a question if it's pressing in the course of the conversation. But other than that, we're really looking forward to having this be a very interactive session as much as possible with you. We have a lot to look forward to in the next hour, and we're really excited to hear and to see your response. So let me get our program started here by introducing our amazing Kelly Sweeney McShane, who's going to come on camera now. Yay! Kelly has been our president and CEO for going on now 23 years. She's led this organization through some tremendous growth, through pandemic moments, through multiple strategic plans, through deepening and enriching our programs in so many ways, and is respected and known as a community leader, both in the areas of healthcare and housing. So I'm so excited that you get to hear from her today and hear her engage and interact with her. Now, I think many of you already know and love Kelly, and props in the chat or a little reaction of love and appreciation. We really want you to hear that, or we really want Kelly to feel some love as she comes on. So go ahead, Kelly. I'll step back as you give an organizational overview to begin with.
Great. Thank you so much, Leah. And thank you so much for everyone for being with us today as we talk about a topic that I'm particularly passionate about, which is both about ending family homelessness in Washington, D.C., as well as looking to improve health for residents of the District of Columbia. It feels very appropriate to be having this conversation today. It's sure gotten cold this week, and November 1st was actually the start of the hypothermia winter season, and the first below 30-degree hypothermia day. So again, feels like a very appropriate time. Some of the things I'm really excited about the work that we do at Community of Hope is first that we are deeply focused and have deep roots and lots of experience about working with families who are experiencing homelessness, as well as really focusing on the areas of healthcare and particularly around maternal and child health. And as you'll learn today, we're really trying to be innovative and creative about how do we better connect those two services together. Community of Hope is also well positioned because we both try to care directly for families and provide really impactful services, but we also take that experience and try to look at it from a system level. And how do we change the system to make it better for all participants and all residents of the district? And you'll hear a little bit from that lens today. So just as we get started, I do have a quick question for people, is whether or not you think, and I think we might even have a poll, whether you think the number of families who are experiencing homelessness is actually increasing or decreasing in the district. And similarly, whether there are individuals, the number of individuals who are experiencing homelessness are increasing or decreasing. There's definitely been changes and trends that have changed over the years, including during COVID, and I'll show you a slide about that in a second. But curious to see what people think about what they're reading, what they're hearing, what they're seeing as they're driving around town, whether or not you think homelessness is increasing or decreasing among families and among individuals in the District of Columbia. So if you see the slide there, the poll there, you can go ahead and add in a note. I'm not sure I can see what the results are, so maybe Leah can help me see that as people are voting. So as you're taking a look at that, if we could just have a slide that shows the point. Oh, it looks like 75% of people think that family homelessness is increasing, and 96% think that homelessness among individuals is increasing. And about a quarter of people think that family homelessness in DC is decreasing. So thank you for that. And Brittany, if you could show the slide showing the point in time. Interestingly enough, the number of families experiencing homelessness has been significantly decreasing over the last couple of years, including during the pandemic. And that is the blue line at the bottom. You'll see the height of 2016, there were about 1,500 households, families at any given point who are experiencing homelessness. And that decreased down to 347 households in 2022. Lots of reasons for that, including, I believe, the homelessness prevention program that we're going to talk about, including significant investment in housing for families in the district, as well as a significant change in policy that families can now access family shelter throughout the year and not just in cold weather. But if you'll see in the past year, there's been about a 12% increase in homelessness between 2022 and 2023. And this is something that we're trying to keep a close eye on. The numbers of individuals experiencing homelessness was also starting to decrease in about 2020. And you'll see there's, again, a 10% increase in the past year, up to about 3,750 individuals who are experiencing homelessness at a given point in time within the District of Columbia. So there's definitely still a lot of work to be done and a lot of trends that we're keeping an eye on. Community of Hope is seeing serving some of the most numbers we've ever served in the past. We are on track in 2023 to serve about 1,600 households, and that represents over 4,500 people by the end of 2023. So again, very significant. So let's transition a little bit to talk about the system for families experiencing homelessness in the district to make sure we kind of understand what that system looks like. And then we'll move on to talk about some of the innovative programs that we provide. So I'd like to have Jamey Burden as well as Stephanie Hawthorne, two of our amazing leaders, join me. There's Jamey and there is Stephanie as well. And Jamey, maybe just introduce yourself and your role and how long you've been at Community of Hope.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jamey Burden. I'm the Vice President for Housing Programs and Policy at Community of Hope, and I've been with the agency over 14 years now.
Someone can do the math as we add up. You'll see we've got lots of years between all of us. And Stephanie, how about you?
Hi, good afternoon. Stephanie Hawthorne. I'm the Program Director for the Homelessness Prevention Program, and I have been with Community of Hope for 6.5 years.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think you started the program, has made it a huge success, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But before we get into that, Jamey, we talk a lot internally about people who need affordable housing and are housing unstable. as separate and somewhat different from those who are actually experiencing homelessness. Can you talk a little bit about why that's important and how that factors into some of the work that we do? And I believe we have a graphic to show for this as well.
Yeah, sure. So looks like the graphic is coming up. There it is. So very briefly, what this graphic is showing is the big light blue circle is the whole population of DC, and the inner circles are people living in poverty is the purple one, the yellow one is people living in extreme poverty, and the green one is people who are severely housing cost burdened. And the bullseye, the smaller red one, that's the people experiencing homelessness. So I guess what I would say is this is my good news, bad news slide. The good news is, as you can see, homelessness is actually a pretty small population compared to the overall population, and even the population that's in poverty and extreme poverty and severely housing cost burden. So it's a relatively speaking small number. The other good news, and we'll get to this a little more in the presentation, is but we have a lot of success working with the people that we do serve who are experiencing homelessness. We have quite a bit of success. So that's the good news. The tough news, the challenging news, is that those inner circles of poverty, extreme poverty, and people who are severely housing cost burden are the people who are always most vulnerable to coming into homelessness, particularly those who are lower income and extremely severely housing cost burden. So that is the challenge. Is those are the ones that are vulnerable and at any given time are sometimes one paycheck away, or loss of benefits, or an illness from coming into experiencing homelessness. And I guess in terms of a system question, the homelessness assistance system, I think, can do a very good job with the range of services we're going to talk about shortly. But without more affordable housing, without good paying jobs, and without assistance to support those who are disabled or who have other challenges, it does become obviously very hard. And so there are a lot of larger than homelessness assistance system questions coming into play here. And so that remains a challenge.
Thanks, Jamey. And I think, again, that's a really important point, because I think people hope that we have extra housing vouchers that we can give to everyone, and that just is not the unfortunately the way that that we are resourced, and that is continuing to be a challenge, and then an advocacy thing that we do. How do we advocate for better jobs, for more of that affordable housing? So for those, again, as we're looking at those in the very center who are experiencing homelessness, Stephanie, can you talk a little bit about, if you are a family in the district and you are experiencing homelessness, where do you go? What do you do? What does that look like? How do you access homeless assistance services?
Sure. So one of the great things about the homeless system in DC, in the district, is that it is centralized. And so there is one location for families to go to when they need assistance. So it's more of a front door approach, so that families don't have to search around to figure out how to access services. So in the district, our centralized intake center is the Virginia Williams Family Resource Center. And so to be eligible for homeless services, any family that is experiencing homelessness or at risk of experiencing homelessness, they would visit Virginia Williams. To be eligible for homelessness assistance, you need to be a district resident or be fleeing domestic violence from another state and have minor children or adult dependents in your legal custody. You can also be a pregnant mom in your second trimester to go to Virginia Williams and access services. Once you are at Virginia Williams, they complete an assessment of the family to determine if you are eligible for homeless services. Once a family is deemed as eligible, there are two tracks that they can go on. One is the family absolutely has nowhere to stay for that day that they visited Virginia Williams. And then those families are placed in shelter if needed. And then the other track is for those families who have at least one night to stay somewhere up to 30 days. And then those families are referred to the homelessness prevention track. That track could either include a referral to ERAP or the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, and that's for families who are already in their units and just need financial assistance with rental arrears, et cetera. And then the other portion of the homelessness prevention resources is the Homelessness Prevention Program that I am the director of for Community of Hope. And the families that we see the most that come into our program that way are those who are in doubled up living situations. So they're already in the community living with family and friends, but they do want to get a home of their own for their family.
Thanks, Stephanie. And again, I think this is important as we go into the winter season. And I see somebody's asking about contacts, so we can share some of the information about where to call in Virginia Williams as well.
Absolutely.
And we'll come back to homelessness prevention in a second, but we do have this graphic. I'm a visual person sometimes to think about once then you come to Virginia Williams, whether you end up in a homelessness prevention or get placed. Jamey, can you just talk a little bit about kind of the rest of the system and how the flow goes and the types of services that we provide at Community of Hope?
Sure. So within this graphic, there's a lot of different services, and Stephanie did a great job of talking about where someone begins. But I think an important question we also get often is, what about for those who have already come into the system? Like where do they go, and how does the system work? I would say, within the last 15 to 20 years, we've really, as a community and as an agency, tried to create a system where no door is the wrong door, and where, regardless of where someone is experiencing housing stability, they don't have to go back to the beginning. So we don't want this to be thought of as a linear. You start over on the left side of the graphic and you come to Virginia Williams, and then you have to go through all these steps. And if something goes wrong and you wind up homeless again or just housing unstable, that you don't have to go back to the beginning. So that is what we are striving for. So again, within this graphic, the orange represents programming, housing and services that Community of Hope offers within the range of services and assistance within DC. But again, as Stephanie indicated, the prevention program and where people start at Virginia Williams, they can get referred to a prevention program. If there's really nowhere for them to go initially, they would go into shelter. We have a shelter program, the Triumph, which is one of the short-term family housing programs, but there are obviously several other variety of services and shelter programs for families. There in the middle of the screen, there represents where the permanent housing placements are. For permanent housing, most families are referred to rapid rehousing, which is short-term short to medium-term rental assistance, now up to 2 years, and services during that same period. For those who have greater barriers to housing stability and have really going to need longer-term support, we have permanent supportive housing programs as well. And so those programs, within that program, families can have an indefinite amount of rental assistance. So it's like a Section 8 voucher, and then they get supportive services throughout that time too. So within the Community of Hope programs, I'll just quickly run through. We have our prevention program, and we have shelter programs. We're going to talk some about individuals in a little bit, but we have shelter programs for both individuals and families. And then we have a large permanent supportive housing program, both scattered site and site-based. That means that scattered site program, the families can take their voucher and move and pick their own apartment. The site-based permanent supportive housing programs means that the subsidy is attached to the building and the person stays in the building that where they come in, and services are all mobile and come to them for both rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing programs. So those programs have grown a great deal. Obviously, affordable housing is important to this. We'll probably keep going back to that theme, and that's why that is in this graphic, that we really, the community relies on being able to provide access to clients to get those those available opportunities where they exist. And again, I would just emphasize that along with getting referred, when they come to Virginia Williams, you'll notice the arrows underneath and above, and there's important diversion and prevention work going on, where if someone runs into trouble when they're in a rapid rehousing program, housing instability, then they are referred back to the program. But the idea is that we don't lose people in the shuffle, and people don't have to go back to the start. So that's kind of a very brief overview of the system we're talking about.
Thanks, Jamey. And again, because we are involved in each step, we can see where it's working, where it's not working, and where the challenges are. So Stephanie, I want to go back to you in homelessness prevention, because I do think the homelessness prevention and that sort of front door, helping to support people before they enter into shelter, has really been an important factor in helping to reduce the number of families experiencing homelessness. So can you talk a little bit about the types of services that we provide and some of the maybe needs and challenges that you're seeing as people come into the homelessness prevention program?
Absolutely. So in short, the homelessness prevention program helps to stabilize families in their current situation, their current living situation, while we provide case management to address barriers that they're having to housing. So I know I spoke previously about a large number of families that come into the homelessness prevention program are those in doubled up situations. At times when the families are coming to us, their housing, it has become unstable because there's something going on in the home that they're in. A lot of times family members and friends have no problem helping their family, but it becomes a financial burden. It becomes a bit of a burden to continue to assist. So where the homelessness prevention program helps with that is we are able to provide financial assistance. So that's one portion of what the prevention program does, to assist those host families or those family members and friends that are supporting the families that we're serving. Another portion of the financial assistance, we do see families that come in who are in their own units, but they need support around budgeting and finances, just to assist with where they are with their rental assistance. So we utilize case management to help out with whatever the barriers are for the families that are coming. We stabilize them. Our hope is to stabilize them in their current living situation. At times, we do need to divert them to other family members and friends, but we place a lot of emphasis on utilizing your community of support that you already have. So that's one of the biggest things that the prevention program does. We also advocate on behalf of families with landlords and different things. But the major goal is to try to address the barriers that those families are having to getting a home of their own. And I think one of the greatest challenges for the homelessness prevention program that we've seen is that, you know, families come to us after years of trauma and different barriers, and our program is short term. So it's 90 to 120 days. And it is often almost impossible to address all of the needs and barriers that family has in that 120-day time. However, the greatest thing about the homelessness prevention program is there is no limit to the amount of times a family can come back and get services from us. So we have seen, great success when we have been able to close families out from our program, give them a case plan to follow while they're closed, make sure they're stable in their environment in the community, and then they come back to us when they're ready to move forward, or if anything happens in the living situation that we were able to set them up in.
Thanks, Stephanie. And I think this theme around years of trauma is one that comes up very regularly in all of our conversations and all of our services. So we've talked sort of big picture about the services we provide. Could you share a story of someone you've worked with and how we have supported them in the homelessness prevention program?
Absolutely. So this family in particular is sort of like a model case for a lot of the families that we've seen. This particular client, she's 22 years old. She was having her first child, a 4-month-old baby, and she came to us staying in the home of an aunt. The aunt had asked her to go down to Virginia Williams to get assistance because she had to leave because she could no longer financially afford to support the family. So the first thing that the prevention program was able to do was solidify this family being able to stay with the aunt longer. We offered financial assistance in the form of like food assistance and utility bills, anything where the family's bills would fluctuate because they're assisting someone else. So we will assist with those things. We were able to stabilize her in that situation and then began to work on her barriers. Some of those were unemployment, low income. And so connecting her to TANF vendor and to TANF resources with our VDS that we have on site from DHS. And so she was able to increase her income in that way. We also connected her to job leads. So ultimately, eventually, she found part-time work and she was able to have TANF. And so we did close her out with the agreement with her aunt that she would be able to stay to continue to work on the other barriers. She was also connected to mental health services with Community of Hope, which she chose to go through, and then healthcare services as well for her baby with Community of Hope. So once those things were addressed and we were able to connect her with a child care voucher as well, she was closed out. And then she also had some other barriers to work on while she was closed. She was open with us for the full 120 days. She came back after 90 days of being closed, a little bit over 90 days of being closed. But at the time she came back, she had found full-time employment and her name was selected from a low income waiting list. And so she was ready to lease up into her unit. So when she reopened with us, we did a budget class with her, went over what her bills would look like for her new unit. So more of like a ready to lease up kind of conversation. And then we were able to assist with prevention funds, rental assistance, so a short-term rental assistance where we paid 100% of first month's rent and security. We paid 75% of second month, 50% of third, and 25% of fourth. And she also received a financial breakdown on her portions to pay month to month, and then also her portions to put in savings. So by the time we pulled out after the fourth month, she had at least 2 months of rent already saved up to move forward. And so she did exit successfully. She comes back and talks to us whenever she wants to, but she has not had to re-enter the system, and she is doing very well in the home of her own with her and her son. So that one was like one of the greatest successes I've seen so far.
Thank you, Stephanie. That's just, again, inspires me. And I think the flexibility and overtime are just wonderful examples with that. Thank you for sharing that. Jamey, Stephanie told a particular story, but we look at a lot of data and outcomes across programs. So if you can just go over I think we've got a slide on this as well, just showing a little bit of how we're tracking our outcomes overall across our programs.
Yeah, sure. And I can brag about Stephanie's work as well, because the first part of this slide shows our success rate for homelessness prevention in 2022. Once again, this slide goes from left to right, our prevention work, our temporary housing work, and then our permanent housing work. So yeah, our prevention program, of the 704 families we served in 2022, 95% of them did not need to enter into shelter. That's the high, right up there with the highest success rate that we've been able to achieve as an agency. So again, congrats to Stephanie and her team on that work. We have great teams in our temporary housing programs too. We serve a lot of families. 178 in 2022, once again with a high success rate of those actually exiting and entering into permanent housing destinations. For the individuals that we serve, and Kalifia is going to talk about this in a little bit, but you know, those are some of the individuals that have been living outside, have a lot of chronic health issues and a lot of challenges. So I just would say that we've been doing really well with that population as well, getting them housed in a timely manner. There is a fair bit of lateral movement. So when we say there's 60% have entered permanent housing, it's not as if the other 40% wound up back outside. That's a rare thing. In some cases, we need to help them move into transitional housing, which doesn't count as permanent housing. And also sometimes they have health needs that would be better suited in a different program model. So even like nursing homes or healthcare. And our permanent housing programs, our rapid rehousing program, and our permanent supportive housing programs, again, are achieving success at a higher rate than we ever have. I guess I would do a little caveat with the rapid rehousing program for those of you who know, who have read where that program is at, in terms of there's some new legislation coming up to revise the program a little bit. And in the meantime, pretty much all of those families, unless they move on their own, have been staying in the program. So there haven't been a lot of exits from that program. Very, very good work on our teams nonetheless. And we serve a lot of families in those programs, and with a very high success rate. Permanent supportive housing as well. Those are as I mentioned earlier, those are longer term folks who have higher needs and are going to be receiving services and rental assistance longer term. But our team provides wraparound services for those, including services for the children and a variety of other services related to making sure that vocational development and educational programming is available. So we're really happy with the success of our programs in the last year.
Thanks, Jamey, and thanks, Stephanie. So we're going to transition a little bit. We've talked about kind of the bigger program. We are going to transition to talk a little bit about a new innovative program, and I'm going to ask Dr. Dawn Sherman to come on screen. This is something that's been gestating, if I might say, for a year or so, and is a really exciting initiative to support people who are both pregnant and experiencing homelessness. I believe this is one of the few ones and really unique in the district, and came from a lot of feedback from providers, from government, and from people with lived experience of homelessness and pregnancy about what that need is. So Dawn, can you introduce yourself? You're one of the newer people at Community of Hope, but you have hopped right into running this program, and talk about our program called Housing Our Newborns, Empowering You. And I think we will show you our cute logo. Can you tell us a little bit about the Honey program and your role in that?
Of course. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Dawn Sherman, and I serve as the Vice President of Community Impact and Evaluation here at Community of Hope. I have been here for almost 8 months now, and it's been a wonderful ride so far. And I must say that I am honored to lead this innovative program. I know our logo is coming up soon, and you can see it behind me here. But our program is called Housing Our Newborns, Empowering You, or Honey for short. And the overall goal of our program is to ensure that pregnant people who are experiencing homelessness in DC are receiving client-centered care and access to prenatal care and supports for themselves and their families and their new babies. Ultimately, we want to reduce the number of deaths of new parents and newborns, and be sure to educate and collaborate with other medical centers, other birthing centers, and key housing and homelessness stakeholders in the city to share the needs and best practices for working with pregnant people experiencing homelessness in DC. We have a wonderful team of perinatal navigators and perinatal care coordinators who are embedded at Virginia Williams Family Resource Center to provide that warm handoff once eligibility is determined for homelessness support, and to ask those questions and provide that support as a partner with these pregnant people as they are navigating the homeless system and their pregnancy. And our team also includes a perinatal educator who will provide training and develop resources for our many stakeholders across the city to educate them about the unique needs of this population.
So I know one of the questions we've gotten has been around who's eligible. And I just wanted, for those on the call, it really are people who are coming to Virginia Williams who are experiencing homelessness and deemed eligible. As much as we love to serve everyone, back to kind of, this is a particularly vulnerable time in people's lives, and we really want to focus and learn. I think we're starting next week. We're just launching it. So Dawn, why is this so unique, and why is it so important that we provide these combination of perinatal services as well as making sure people are stably housed?
This program is very unique. It is the first of its kind that we know of in the city and across the nation. And it's meant to address this need for early access to prenatal care for some of our most vulnerable residents in the city. We know that navigating the homelessness system in DC is challenging enough. And when pairing that with the challenges of pregnancy, it's a lot for anyone to bear. And in this program, the Honey program is meant to help support these families in the best way we can, ensuring that as they are navigating the homelessness system, that their pregnancy and the supports for their families are top of mind. Making sure that they are connected to prenatal care, and if they're not, asking about what their needs are and making sure that we are connecting them to a provider in the area, whether it's Community of Hope or another healthcare center within the city, making sure that they have a birth plan and that whatever their living situation is when they come to us, that we're able to ensure that they have what they need for a healthy pregnancy, a healthy baby, and a stable environment for themselves and their family.
Yeah, I was struck in the interview process as we were designing this about how people talked about how stressful it is. It's already stressful if you're experiencing homelessness and if you're pregnant, and the impact on your own mental health and the child's development, and anything that we can do to really reduce that stress, I think is really critical. We were on NBC News, so I hope you guys see us. We are I don't know if we'll be able to share the link or not, but we think we're going to learn a lot in this process. So we're looking forward to seeing how that all develops. So thank you so much, Dawn.
You're so welcome.
I'm going to transition now, and I see a couple questions in the chat that we're going to come to in a second, but I want to transition a little bit to talk about our work with individuals who are experiencing homelessness. And Kalifia Thomas, if you can join us.
Hello.
Hello, welcome. So we've talked a lot about family homelessness, and that has definitely been the depth of where Community of Hope has worked for over 40 years. But we have started expanding our work to serve more individuals experiencing homelessness because, as you saw in the numbers, there's still a lot of individuals who are experiencing homelessness. We're now serving about 150 individuals in both our Bridge program, which we're going to talk a little bit about, as well as in permanent supportive housing. So Kalifia, can you introduce yourself and your role, and then just talk a little bit about how working with individuals is different from working with families who are experiencing homelessness, and a little bit on how the system is different as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for this opportunity. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kalifia Thomas. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the Senior Director of Housing with our temporary housing programs, which means in large part I help to oversee the Bridget Gerard as well as the Bridget Hope Apartments. And what I've noticed, I think some of the major differences between working with the individuals at our Bridge programs and our families at our short-term family housing program, the Triumph, is that the population, when it comes to individuals, we're dealing with individuals that have a much longer history of housing instability. We're dealing with a lot of individuals that we see coming from being completely unhoused and having been living on the street prior to coming in with us. And we see a lot more chronic medical health issues, as well as a lot more severe mental health challenges. And so that combination of a longer history of housing instability and the more complicated challenges that those individuals experience means that you see a lot of different presentations with the population, and working with them, it can be a little different, and definitely requires a lot more intense partnering.
And I would say, you know, the individual system has not had as many resources as have been in the family system over the years as well. And it's much more, it's not as coordinated. There's not a central intake, right? So it's a little
That
bit
is a huge
more.
part of the difference when you talk about the systems. So absolutely. Unfortunately, individual services aren't maybe as romantic or as appealing, maybe doesn't strike the same chords with some populations, or just those that are advocating. And so you do see a lot more resources for families. And hey, as a mother, I get it. And children are completely innocent in most every aspect of birth, growing up, in their circumstances. And so you do not want families experiencing homelessness. Well, we also don't want individuals experiencing homelessness. And our goal is to decrease the numbers, families across the family system, as well as with individuals. Some other system differences, as you mentioned, there is no centralized intake system. Individuals experiencing homelessness enter the system in several different ways. There is a hotline number that individuals or those working with individuals can call. There's outreach programs throughout the city as well, but there's no one place like Virginia Williams Family Resource Center where individuals can go. And so that does make entering into the system for individuals a lot more complicated. Another thing that we see, so we deal with, as I said, those that have been completely unhoused and living in encampments or under the bridges or in tent cities. But we also have a lot of our individuals coming to us from congregate settings. So that's what the nature of shelter is for individuals. It's, when you think about some of the shelters you may have seen on TV, you think of an open space with cots where there's a lot of people living in one environment or one room, and there's no privacy. There's no place to keep your belongings or your things. You're sharing bathrooms with a lot of different people. And so that is the setting for individuals in most of the services and shelters in the city. And so you don't see that as much with families anymore. There was a big push to close down DC General. And so families, it's a lot more intimate and safe and smaller and just more personalized services. And that is another huge difference that you see with individuals.
So we, in the last year and a half, maybe 2 years now, have started
Almost
a program
two.
called The Bridge, both at our Northwest location and now at our Ward 8 location. And I think we took some of that concept of intimacy and safety from the family work and have moved it into how we're working with individuals at The Bridge. So can you talk about The Bridge and why it's unique and why it's so important?
Absolutely. Yes. When we were designing and kind of conceptualizing what bridge housing would look like, what we wanted the program to be is a safe and welcoming environment for individuals to be able to be temporarily housed while they're working towards their permanent goals of permanent housing. And so individuals in our programs, they share an apartment depending on the size of the apartment. We have 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. And so an individual may be in a 1-bedroom apartment, or they may be in a 3-bedroom apartment and have 2 housemates. But what's unique is that they're in their own bedroom, and they have a door that locks. They have storage, they have dressers, they have space for themselves. They're not sharing a bathroom with 10, 15, 20 other individuals. They may even have their own bathroom. And another huge benefit for the populations is we've turned apartments into housing for individuals. So they have their own kitchen. And one of the things we do know is that individuals that have been unhoused or living in congregate settings, as I said, they have a lot of medical challenges sometimes, and sometimes that's related around diet. And so being able to have their own kitchen and cook for themselves actually helps them be able to achieve a healthier nutritional diet for themselves, as well as we start doing a lot of working with them on how, when they do lease up into their own apartment, how can they maintain their diets and cook and do things that they haven't done sometimes in up to 10 years. And so it's very unique and beneficial in that way. Also, there's no requirement for our individuals to leave out. When individuals are in a congregate setting, that's a first come, first serve type of setting. They are not guaranteed a placement each night. And so when someone is in our program, their placement is their placement. They can come and go. They have autonomy to be able to do that. And I think that is very humanizing. I think that clients can appreciate that. And again, it's helping them to be able to prepare themselves for when they are living in their own apartment. Our program is also beneficial in that we are able to have smaller caseloads. And so that does mean a lot more personalized case management, where our case managers are right on site. We do also have resident monitors that are on site, that, you know, individuals that need a little more support, they have someone there that they can just sometimes walk outside of their apartment door and be able to ask for some assistance. And those are some things that, you know, one may not think about, but it's really important for someone who has had a long history of housing instability. As was mentioned earlier, that also means there's a lot more trauma that we see. And so having that support right on site is very helpful. And I think the last thing I would mention that is unique about Bridge Housing, in that we have our own facility. So we are secondary providers. Other service providers have a place to meet with their clients. A lot of the struggle sometimes in quickly housing individuals that are outside or that are in congregate settings, you can't find them sometimes. They have to go out every day, and so you don't know where they're going to be. Well, with our clients, their service providers can come right on site and meet with them.
I remember as we were designing, we did have to fight pretty hard to make sure we could keep the kitchens and that everybody could have their own individual room with a lock that helps them feel safe. So it's things that I think many of us just take for granted that are really so important in being humanizing and making a comfortable place for people and respectful for them to live. So Kalifia, can you talk a little bit and share just a story of someone we've helped at the Bridge, and what does that look like?
Absolutely. And trying to think of one story, it's hard. We have a lot of successful stories because we just do good work, and I'm very proud of my teams and the hard work that they do. But I will share a story of someone who actually just leased up into her apartment this week. She came to us she was coming, having been in a congregate setting, but she walked out of that and walked away from it and made the decision that she'd rather be unhoused completely because she did not feel safe in that setting. And she was working with the outreach provider who contacted our program director and was like, "We've heard about your program. How can I get this individual connected?" So we walked the outreach provider through the referral source. In the process, she did come on board, and the client had a lot of medical issues. And so while she was staying with us, she actually received a cancer diagnosis, and it would have been impossible for her to receive the treatments and the care that she needed to receive if she were unhoused and or in a congregate setting. She actually said to her case manager, "I don't know if I would have made it without you in this program. And so she was very, even though she was having her health challenges, she was very focused on, I want to be in my own place. That's the goal I want for myself and my life. And she was very diligent. She worked with her case management team, and she leased up into her apartment this week.
Wonderful. And I think a good example of these serious health conditions. Again, imagine living on the streets while you're trying to manage through the cancer. So thank you so much, Kalifia. I'm now going to invite everybody on and take a couple of questions. I know I've got a couple in here. And if other people have some that they want to drop in, I think we've been answering some of them as we go along. I did see a question about Community of Hope's capacity and the city's capacity to help additional families. I think that's a really important question, especially as what I'm hearing is the next budget season is also going to be more difficult as the city might be seeing reduced revenues from lots of different places. So Community of Hope is planning to do some additional expansion around families in particular. There are a significant amount of housing vouchers for permanent supportive housing as well as for rapid rehousing. I know, Jamey, we've been looking at some of the numbers. I think we probably have a good 100 more households that we could assist on the family side. Part of that is finding staff. Part of that is finding units and apartments for people to move into. And so that is still very much in the works. But again, from a system level, continuing to take a look at the resources that the district has available, continuing to advocate to make sure to prioritize services for both families as well as individuals. Jamey, do you want to add anything else into that?
I think you covered it very well. As you said, we have some expansion, particularly with PSH, that I think will be impactful. We just have to get it moving a little more quickly in terms of getting families moved in. What we don't know is what's coming this winter in terms of how many may present at Virginia Williams Family Resource Center. So I think that's what we're gearing up for. Our short-term family housing program is serving our occupancy as high as ever. So we are ready to go in terms of being able to maximize the resources that we do have. But we are a little concerned, of course, just in terms of how many more vulnerable families may be needing to enter into the system during the winter months.
I also see a question from a midwife, Mandy, thanks for writing, asking about saying Virginia Williams is a one-stop place. If they don't meet the criteria for help, do they then give resources for places that can help? Dawn, I don't know if you want to take an attempt at that or initial thoughts.
Thank you, Mandy, for your question in the chat. So to answer your original question, referrals for the Honey program are received directly through Virginia Williams Family Resource Center. And so if a pregnant person comes in and is deemed eligible for homelessness assistance, they would be referred to our program for additional triage and determination of whether they want additional support with their pregnancy and prenatal care. For those that are not deemed eligible for homelessness support, they would not come to our attention. And so in terms of what additional supports our team may be able to provide, we will have some handouts available to point pregnant people towards prenatal care if they're looking for supports and services for their pregnancy. But it's important to note that the Honey program is not a housing program, and so we would not be able to assist with any housing supports through Honey.
And I would just add, again, this education component, we want to help prenatal care providers understand how the homeless system works. What are the eligibility, what forms do you need? Because if you are higher risk, you can be prioritized in your first and second trimester of pregnancy to get into shelter. And I'm not sure everybody knows that or knows what the forms are. So please do reach out to us if you're interested in learning some more, and we'll see if we can put something in around some of the eligibility criteria, but those are some of our hopes and dreams going forwards. So I'm not sure I'm seeing any other questions in the chat at this point. Leah, maybe we can have you come on and just share a little bit for those of you who might be thinking, I'd love to get more involved. What would that look like? that you could hop in and talk a little bit about that. We'll see if any other questions come in otherwise, and we'll then transition from there.
Hello, thank you all again. This has been so informative. I've worked at Community of Hope for 12 years, and I learn something every time I get to talk to my colleagues. And so really huge appreciation. I want to encourage everybody to do some appreciation here in the chat too, so that our panelists feel your love and your support. So I do want to just share a couple of ways that you can be involved, and so many of you are involved already in so many ways, and we're incredibly grateful for that. You are a DC resident, and you're ready and engaged with your council members. One of the things that's really important to us is to make sure that our city is continuing to prioritize the needs of people who are experiencing homelessness. So having robust human services supports in our DC budget is really important. We'll talk with you more about that in the spring as those budgets start to come together, but keep an ear to the ground on that. Community of Hope receives a fair amount of support from the city, as well as the generous donations of our donors to make all of this possible. Both at Bridge and at our family shelter called the Triumph, we have volunteer opportunities. So we would love to encourage you to come out and to volunteer. There'll be links that we'll share out to follow up about that. And then we are always in need of items for parents who are expecting babies and little babies who've just come into the world, and for household goods as families get and individuals get settled into their new apartments. So we receive a whole host of used and new items for these families. And we're expecting, especially with the addition of our Honey program, that we're going to need a lot more gently used baby clothes. And so we would love to talk with you all about that if you know folks who are looking to share. Right now we're heading into the year-end giving season, and we do a holiday cheer campaign, which is where we provide gift cards for every family in our housing program. And we're just about $28,000 away from our $60,000 goal. So would love any of your supports for that. And then your continued generosity through our Hope and Action Fund. We would love to have your continued support in those ways. So there are always ways to get involved at Community of Hope, and I will always be very happy to go over those with you at any given time. So there will be a follow-up email that we'll send out with more information about those links and ways to do that. And in the meantime, what I just want to do to close out here, and I'm just dropping a couple of links in the chat as well, more than a couple, it's a lot, sorry. I just want to say thank you. Thank you to our attendees for being here today. Hopefully you are inspired as we are every day for this work. Thank you for listening in. Thank you for your questions. And thank you for the ways that we're going to partner. Thank you so much to our experts who are at the table. Thank you, Jamey. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Kalifia. Thank you, Stephanie. And many, many thanks to you, Kelly, for your leadership. It's so inspiring to be able to be a part of this. Again, have a wonderful weekend, everyone, and we look forward to hearing from you next time. There is a survey that we'll post shortly, and that will come out in an email to you tomorrow. So we look forward to hearing your feedback on that. Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.